Well, hello. I want to welcome you to this session and start right off by saying, that I'm Rob Dawalt. If you have questions or problems, you can always get a hold of me at robdawalt@me.com. Okay? And in this first session we're going to talk about this time, there's really two interesting topics. White collar crime. Of course, we want to know what it is. And, how much of a problem is it? And, where did we come up with this term? It's a guy from Indiana. Actually, he's originally from out, I think maybe in Dakotas or somewhere like that, but he attended University of Chicago, and then he ended up teaching for Indiana University from like 1930 to 1950, and he finally passed away and came up with some pretty important concepts like this whole thing of white collar crime. That was his wording. And then also he created a theory called Differential Association. And basically what he said is that criminality is learned. It's learned behavior. So for example, in the white collar context, a young guy goes to work, and this could be anything from a policeman to a banker to a factory worker to a go on and on, paint salesman, and so basically this applies to if whole families can be taught to be criminals by the grandfather, father, the children. They teach their peers, or it can be just something that you learn from peers on the street corner, and that type thing. So, this is one of his theories. And, one of them, I think there's a great old song, you ought to Google on this, and it's Johnny Cash had a neat song about how he built a Cadillac by stealing parts from the factory where he worked and assembling it in his garage. And it was like a 1948, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54 Cadillac. And none of the parts had there was back fenders from a 48 and front fenders from a 52, and he said he took parts out in his lunchbox, and it's just a joke, which is kind of hard to believe from Johnny Cash, but it is. It's pretty funny, but it really illustrates what I'm talking about. And I think just for fun, I'm going to post that up there because it shows, one of the biggest areas of white collar crime is employee theft. That's really true. Now, one of the other things though, and I've got to wipe this clean in order to get you the other information. There's a wide range here. It's employee theft, steal $1 out of the cash register, all the way up to Bernie Madoff, who stole, millions of dollars, So that's the range. So it's a very wide ranging. What's the common denominator? Non-violent, okay? And so anything that's kind of non-violent gets lumped off into white collar crime. Bernie Madoff is an example. Martha Stewart might be another example, where you're lying when you're dealing insider trading with stocks and bonds and stuff like that. And so she got basically charged with a form of perjury for lying to an investigator about an insider trading scheme. So basically these are the kind of things that we're talking about. Well, I posted some websites on this. You should check those out, and also look at some of the high points on that. I wanted to hit some quick things on here that I think are very important. One of them is that there's different regions of the country where there's a lot of issues with this white-collar crime. Another thing we don't want to rule out is internet crime is now being included in white-collar crime. Someone steals something from you by using the internet. Some of it can be like these phishing schemes. They can put a virus on your computer and then tell you that you have to buy this software to get it off. It's almost like a blackmail scheme using your computer. You want to be very careful about opening anything if you don't know who sent it, or even if you do know who sent it, because that's the latest, is I get stuff from my sister sometimes and it just doesn't look right, especially if you can see what the originating email address is, something different than what's normal for my sisters. I just dump it, just throw it away, So those are things you got to be concerned about. There's even schemes out there where, say, a guy wants to look at some pornography, just on his computer, which is, that's his legal right, but someone comes on there and says, you've been looking at pictures of underage children, and you've got to pay this $500 fine, or the FBI is going to come and arrest you. Literally, there's a scheme out there. I was reading that on the FBI. It's a kind of a worm that gets up in your computer and tries to make you send money to this certain address. There's a lot of different internet type schemes. A big one that was going around for a while was you're talking on the phone and someone can actually record the numbers that you're pushing on a touch-tone phone and then turn around and charge phone calls to your phone. That happened to me, actually. I wrote a letter to somebody telling them they owed a bill for a client, and she actually took my phone number and was charging collect calls to my phone. This was like 15 years ago when you could still do that. But that was like $600 back 15 years ago. Fortunately, I was able to collect that money from that person. But these kinds of white-collar crimes have been going on for a long time. The one I wanted to really touch on with you was the states. Like I said, what do you suppose the number one state for victims of white-collar crime would be? Easy answer. Number one is California. Number two is Florida. Number three is Texas. Number four, New York. Well, why are they so high? Well, you take some other states. Let's look at like Montana. They're so far down the list they don't even have a number. Illinois, for example, is number 7. Ohio is number 9. Virginia number 8. So the more population, the more activity, where you're out buying stuff, you're shopping on the internet, banking, anything that you're doing, it just makes you an easier target. So the more population, the more problems there are with white-collar crime. And so, yeah, like I said, number one again, California. Number two, Florida. Basically, the FBI impersonation that I was saying, where they claim to be the FBI, has actually cost people $4.5 million, over $4.5 million. So a lot of times this is a form of extortion where they try to force you to give them money for different pop-ups on your computer that says, hey, we're the FBI. And so they can also tie in, if they can find your information through phishing, they'll start making phone calls claiming that they're collecting money for something that you never heard of, a bill you owe, stuff like that. So one of the bad things that you get into is if you ever had one of those payday loans, that can be really bad. Here's one that's interesting. I never heard of it, but the grandparent scheme. And this can be an issue for elderly people where they were subjected to a phone call by a person claiming to be one of their grandkids. They're in trouble, they're in Mexico, they need them to send them money right away. This exact same thing happened to my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is a minister. He was in Africa, actually. Well, somewhere along the line, someone starts calling people in his church, elderly people in his church, claiming that he is in the Philippines and needs money right away. Please send it by Western Union. Well, I think this all probably came out of his Facebook page because he had included everybody in his church on that Facebook page. And so, it's coming at you from all different directions. You got to be really careful, not put too much information on Facebook. Now, I know people who won't even put pictures of their kids on Facebook because they don't want, the kids to ever be kidnapped, or identity theft of little kids. I've heard of this, 8-year-old kids. They claim that they have a credit card in some name, a child's name, 8 years old. How could that child have gotten a credit card? Well, a fraud type white collar ring gets that identity somehow and gets a credit card, runs up a bunch of credit. There's a great little film out right now. I really enjoy it. It's called Identity Theft. Give it a look, although there's a lot of bad language and stuff in it if you don't, if you're not in for that. So you want to be careful. Well, one more thing I really want to cover on this, and I want you to do some of your own research, but one of the main things I want you to understand is, first of all, generally more women get subjected to these scams than men. I think women are maybe a little bit more busy on the internet with Facebook and things like that. There's also an issue, people get the mistaken idea, but according to the reports that I've read, the elderly, frankly, are some of the lowest number of people that are a victim of different scams, even though people do have specific scams that they try to use against the elderly. But it's kind of infrequent in relation to the overall national, situation with these white-collar crime scams. I think victimology is a whole nother subject matter, but if you look at victimology, generally, the more active that you are in society, if you go to taverns, hey, perfectly legal, perfectly fine. You're liable to be hurt accidentally in a bar. A couple pool players get in an argument. They go to swing a pool cue at each other. They hit you in the head. Same exact thing applies to shopping schemes where they get you. A guy in a gas station was running people's credit card twice. I caught that. It was only over like $8.50, but I caught it. I was at a donut shop. You can imagine that. I was at a donut shop, bought about $30 worth of donuts. Well, it shows up on my card, $64, and it was an accident, but there's people that actually do that on purpose, because what they do, they run your card twice, and then they take $34 out of the register, so the book's balance at the end of the day. But you've actually paid twice for your purchase. So that's how the cashier gets at that money. A lot of white-collar crime involves cashiers, convenience stores, gas stations, even banks. And they're hitting the bank or you as a customer for $5, $10 at a pop. But if you do that 100 times in a day, times $10, you're starting to talk about, $1,000 here a day extra that a person can put in their pocket. So a lot of little things, repetitive schemes where they're taking small amounts of money from a lot of people. Now, on the opposite end of the scale, like I was saying earlier, Bernie Madoff did the same type thing where he had these repetitive schemes with these elderly people, but he was doing it on a grand scale, millions of dollars, and he was defrauding elderly people. But overall, generally, if you look at a lot of the statistics, they generally reflect that elderly get less victimized because they don't move around as much. They're not as busy in society. They go home, go to bed at 8 o'clock, watch Law and Order, and you know, stick around the house, eat in at least part of the time, eat out for the early bird special, and then run home and watch Law and Order again. Or my dad used to like to watch those game shows all the time. So that's the kind of thing that you see, is that the more active you are in society, the better odds are that you're going to be a victim sometime of some kind of white collar scheme. So this is something to keep in mind. Hope you enjoy this video. We'll be putting these up about once a week to kind of give you a sense of you know, what the different topics are about and this type thing. So enjoy. Let me know if I can help you in any way. We'll be back with you soon. Thanks a lot.